Right. Good evening, and welcome to the Glens Common Council meeting. It's Tuesday, September 26th, 7:30. We'll open our regular session with the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilman Lang.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight we will open our public comment session. We're going to have a presentation and just actually we're going to postpone the public comment and let's have the presentation by the folks at Creighton and Manning regarding our Webster Avenue pavement preservation project. So we have Jeremy Snagel from our engineering department and folks from Creighton and Manning here to lead us in the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. We're trying to
Go ahead. You're all right. I need copies for the common council, so we're okay.
Okay. How's that? All right. So we're going to do another presentation very similar to the presentation at the Board of Public Safety meeting just about a couple weeks ago. So we'll get right to it. This is Chris Drew.
And if you don't mind, Councilman Clark, could I ask you to grab that microphone and bring it down to them, just so everybody online can hear as well? Apologize, Jeremy. You're a star now.
Always wanted to be. So without further ado, this is Chris Drew, Creighton Manning. He's the city's, Creighton Manning represents the city and he's our design consultant on this project. So.
Thanks, Jeremy. Since we have a couple concepts alternatives to go over, but before I get into those and a little bit more detail, so I'm going to provide a little bit of background on the project before we dive into some of these alternatives. The project really stemmed from an intersection study in 2019 with AGFDC, the Ironic Glens Falls Transportation Council. The purpose of that study was to look at Glen, Webster, and Glen Fire intersections to try to improve the operations and make it more pedestrian safety to get pedestrians across a little bit safer and to improve the operation of the intersection to get vehicles to move a little bit smoother and to take away some of the queuing that's going on in the middle of those two intersections. The results of that intersection analysis were essentially to replace the signal with an actuated traffic signal, which is a bit more of an improvement over a pre-time signal, whereas a full intersection. And the signal operates to more real-time vehicles in the intersection as opposed to pre-time where things are all set and it just operates as is every single time. Additionally, there's a thing called the lead pedestrian intervals that will be built into the signal. That provides a 3 to 7 second head start more or less for pedestrians to get through the intersection. That'll provide some more visibility to make it safer for them to cross. And there'll be a gap between pedestrians get across the intersection and vehicles that go ahead and some time in there for the pedestrians to get across. So that was a recommendation that came out of that study. And as a means to move forward with this intersection project and to get the project funded on the AGFC TIP, which is the Transportation Improvement Program, they were allowed to put in the work on Webster Ave. So the Webster Ave work is really being brought into the overall project because of the intersection study that was completed through AGFTC. The project as it is now is on the TIP, is funded, is federally funded, which is it's an important component of that all the standards and the design of the project have to be to federal guidelines. I'll talk a little bit about that with some of the design alternatives that go into it. But everything needs to be federally funded. It goes all through the guidelines, including PROAG, all the ADA compliance, sidewalks, curb ramps, crosswalks, the signals. All that is built in a program as part of the federal requirement. Important to note that we are in preliminary design. We are, as of right now, just evaluating concept alternatives. Part of that is meeting the public to gauge some input and comments on the proposed alternatives. we're slated to go to construction next year, so just important to note that, we're still, I guess, in the draft design report stage where we're vetting alternatives, laying out concepts, and trying to get some input on that before it goes into final design, and then proceeds to detailed design and goes out to construction. I'll go into a little bit of these concepts in a little bit more detail. I'll switch to the other side so I can try to zoom in because it might be a little bit hard to see, especially in the back, 'cause it's a little bit smaller scale. Let's see here. Move this over here. So I'll show you, so we have two concepts or alternatives, I'll say. One we call the shared lane alternative, and then one the bike lane alternative. The only real difference between the two is the bike lane treatment. The entire section of Webster from Bay to Glen is identical to the two alternatives as far as sidewalks, curbs, drainage, signal, and pad accommodations. The only difference between the two is really the striping and the bike accommodations along the rest. So we try to zoom in a little bit clearer. We'll try to walk from one side to the other. We'll switch to the next one. So on the flyer side, just for reference, the pink here, that's just detection zone for the signals. That's just so that the traffic signal can pick up the vehicles and the bikes and just pick up the faces. So that's all the action is. So as we move to from the Glens side today, we're essentially a shared lane, which is 13-foot travel lanes with the sharrows in the middle, and then a roughly 7-foot shoulder / area for parking. This treatment is basically the same the entire way. No change really, except for as you get down here past Edison, we start to lose some of the width. So we have to lose some of that shoulder / area for parking. And then as you get in front of where the cemetery is, there's almost no width off the parking, so it would just be 2 13-foot lanes. Curbing is planned from the entire stretch, and that'll help keep vehicles off from the grass. That'll help collect some of the stormwater, and that's a concern out there, so we're going to take care of that primarily on the bay side. Some of the water piles here, so additional curbing will help take care of that. Sidewalks proposed pretty much the entire length of the road. A lot of the sidewalk out there is about 4 feet-ish, plus or minus. Federal guidelines are going to go to 5 feet. Some locations, you might be able to trim it down to 4 feet, but you have to have a 5-foot section every 200 feet, plus or minus, for passing. So we're proposing 5-foot sidewalks, as I mentioned, curb the entire way. All the driveway curb cuts that are there now are going to remain. We're not going to take away any of the curb cuts, so we'll drop all the curb down to either a 1-inch reveal or no reveal for all the driveways. And this alternative maintains the existing shoulder / area for parking. Trees in the area, it's hard to tell from this concept. We're not showing tree removals on here, but if there's an existing tree that has root issues with roots or popping on existing sidewalks, those trees are probably going to get removed because they're causing issues with the sidewalks that have to be ADA compliant. And wherever a tree is removed because of that issue, trees will be replaced back in and put street trees in there. And a lot of the trees you notice have been cut back a lot by National Grid, and that's just going to keep on happening over time. They're just going to keep on hacking those trees until there's nothing left. So if it's causing an ADA compliance issue, then the trees are likely to come down. This is the standard practice that we do on all of our sidewalk jobs. And there's quite a few sidewalks out there that are heaving because of the trees. But if there's a couple that are out there that are not impacting the sidewalks, then we can probably leave those alone. So we'll buy a case by case basis.
Could you hold your microphone up just a little?
Sure, that better? Or too much?
Slow down a little bit too.
And go back to how many trees are you talking about taking down?
We don't have that number yet. We're still analyzing that number. So, but if a tree is impacting the sidewalk, if it's causing the sidewalk to heave and you have a lip on it, you can't put a sidewalk back in without taking a tree out. So the roots are going to get impacted by getting out of the sidewalk. So eventually the tree's going to die. So we prefer to take the tree down, put a brand new sidewalk in, and then put a street tree in that won't grow as large, won't encompass into the utility lines. So eventually we're going to come out 10, 20 years down the road and do that big V, the V notch in the middle for all the trees.
And talk to me about the width of the sidewalk you're putting in compared to what I have now.
I didn't look to see what you have now, but most of the sidewalk out there is about 4 feet plus or minus. And the standard is 5 foot wide sidewalk.
And the new curbs will be how tall down the street at the,
The standard curb appeal is 6 inches.
and we're gonna get all new curbs down the street?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and some of the curb has depressed over time, and then some of the street paving over the years, sometimes we lose some of that reveal. So the standards with a 6-inch reveal, but across the driveways, there's no reveal at those driveways, unless you have a drainage concern, then it'll be a 1-inch reveal, to keep some of the water on the roof.
You said sidewalks more or less, what did you mean by more or less per sidewalk?
For the width?
No, you said all of Webster was gonna get sidewalks. more.
Yep, so like this section here, this sidewalk here, we went out there and evaluated it, and it's ADA compliant, which means the crosswalk on it needs ADA 1.5% crosswalk.
How about up by the cemetery, where there is no sidewalk?
Sidewalk is going in, that's what's right here.
Cross station today, can we get a sidewalk?
Right here, correct.
Very good.
Yep, so we added that in there to get a full connection. So where we see that there's no sidewalk, the section here, small piece here, small piece here, if we can get longer sections that are ADA compliant, we can leave them and ultimately it'll save cost. So let me show you the bike layout first. Which again, the only difference here is in the striping, but it is a little bit different.
Can you see on that where the new sidewalk on Edison is narrower than the sidewalk on Webster?
Yes.
Can you
Is that a question or you're telling me?
I can't figure out how to see it on there. I mean, I know it's true. The sidewalk in front of, I'm at 28 Webster,
Okay.
and that's the old wide sidewalk that somebody can push a baby carriage and walk a dog on the same path and not get near 'em. But they replaced sidewalks on Edison.
Yeah, if that was
About
done,
the third house, and it's narrower
Mhm.
than mine. So which way are you going on these new sidewalks?
it'll go wider. It'll be wider. The city has a slightly different standard. Webster sidewalks have to be wider because of the federal funding that's tied to it. The project has to follow federal guidelines, because that's where the chunk of the funding comes from the project. If it's not built to federal standards, there's funding or reimbursement issues that the city would run into. They have an issue of not getting reimbursed for some of the work when it's built in construction. So Webster will be wider, it'll be 5 foot max, so we can't push the sidewalk further in the property. We can only go about a foot to the other way, towards the road, to get to the 5 feet.
So that means the permeable sidewalk will have to come out then too.
As of right now, we're proposing to leave the porous sidewalk in place.
But it's only 4 feet, it's supposed to be 5.
You're not replacing it. So ProAg regulation says if you replace it, you need to replace it to 5 feet. And if you're not replacing it, then it can stay. And that sidewalk, Jeremy can talk more about afterwards, but it's certainly within regulation, it's not broken, and we just paid for it, so.
Yeah.
Why is the road narrowing at the cemetery? Why aren't they taking more of that grass area away to keep it as wide as the rest of Webster? Right there.
Yeah, that's just a natural feel of the road for the most part. And one thing that we're trying to keep in mind with this project is that it's first and foremost it's a traffic signal improvement project. We're able to pull in Webster as a pavement project, which is always to fix the pavement. As a pavement preservation project, you are required to take care of sidewalks, curb ramps at the intersections at minimum. So as you start branching out and adding more curb and widening the road, the scope of the project is getting beyond what the federal guidelines were when it was put on the tip 3 years ago. Let me go over the blanket layout, sir, and then people can chime in with some more comments. So as I mentioned, the main difference with this one is that it's a bike lane treatment, but it's not a bike lane treatment the entire way because there are width issues with this. But starting from Glen to right about Edison, you have a bike lane on both sides. So we have 11 foot travel lane, we'll have a buffer strip which will keep traffic and bikers separated, and then a 6 foot bike lane. But as you continue towards the end, you start to lose some of the width. So the bike lane will continue on the south side, and we'll go to a shared situation on the north. And as you get closer to the pump station, it'll be back to a shared situation.
So you're going from two bike lanes into one, okay, that's what I understand.
No.
And I live at the other end, so you're going one on each side,
Mhm.
then you cut it down to one. Now, I don't know, not too sure of the laws about bike riding, bike and bike lane are, but you're supposed to ride with traffic and bike.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you're forcing people on the north side to go to the south side of the road.
No.
No?
No. No, it's not, no. The bike lane continues on the south side and goes to Sharrows. The north side will be Sharrows on this side, so they can,
Go down the other end of the road.
they can bike on both sides.
You said,
No, that's not what it shows.
down by Bay Street.
It goes to a Sharrows on this, on north and south side. So you don't have the width of the bike lane in here. So if you transition south from a bike lane, and then you transition that into a Sharrow,
Yeah, but you're still in a bike lane, you can go both directions.
Can you talk about what a Sharrow is?
Right, so we're doing, that part of Webster, without the bike lane, is gonna be like it is now. Everybody's
Yes.
gonna share.
yeah, if the travel lane is 14 feet,
Okay.
Or narrow.
I don't care about traffic.
well, I'm explaining to you how the
I don't
Sharrows.
understand why that's gotta be changed now on the south side, but it's okay to leave it like that on the north side. I mean, the road's not wide enough, obviously, but I just don't, I didn't get any information about this until Friday. Nobody did. I don't know who did, but I did, my wife and I did. So I'm trying to catch up. First of all, I don't understand the thought process of putting that bike lane in. I live at the other end, I see more people riding on the sidewalk than they do the bike lane. I've never seen, I've been here 30 years, I've never seen an accident on that street with a bike.
Riding on the
I don't think it's
sidewalk,
that-
I'm a cyclist, and riding on the sidewalk is illegal. I've actually talked to the police about that, so I can understand why they're putting in lights now.
So, I'm sorry, let me ask the public to refrain and let's get through this presentation of what the options were that were presented to the Board of Public Safety and are being presented to you for comment. And I'll give you a chance to come up and you can comment and then we can move forward. At least, and that way we won't have people speaking for and against bike lanes. This is about two different options. Both options are within the complete street guidelines that we must follow. Both options are available. The reason that these are options is because of the width of the road. If the road was wide enough, you'd have more complete, you'd have bike lanes up the entire area. What a complete street is has parking, bike lanes, and car lanes. And then as your width of a particular road narrows, then those options are limited. And what you have here is a presentation by our engineering company of two different options that were presented to the city to follow. And public comment usually isn't part of this. When we repaved the entire and redid all the sidewalks and the curbs of Dix Avenue, basically we are presented two different options or a couple options that will meet the needs of that road depending on its width, and then we decide what one is the best for that public right of way. And so what we have here is two options for us to consider in the improvements of this road. Please continue.
Yeah, thank you. I think that essentially kind of wraps up my quick summary on the two alternatives. I can turn it over to Jeremy if he has anything he wants to add. Yeah, I'll just leave that one mentioned.
Thank you. Yeah, just remind or inform the council of some of the concerns that we've received. One of them in particular being
Jeremy, a little closer on that microphone. Thank you.
the stretch of porous sidewalk along the south side of Webster Avenue up near the cemetery. Just some background on that. In 2018, the city received a $30,000 Green Infrastructure Stormwater Grant from New York State DEC. And in conjunction with Warren County Soil and Water Conservation, the city installed, I guess, probably 60 to 70 precast panels that were designed to absorb water rather than have it run off to Webster Avenue and into the street or into the storm sewers. So those are very recently installed panels. We understand some of the concerns are probably in regards to aesthetics or the surface finish of those panels. They look a little different than normal concrete, but that does serve a function. It allows water to drain. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick.
Sure. You also, Jeremy, were going to talk a little bit about I believe that we had some common questions that I believe they've been answered, but maybe you could just review them again. Streets, when we're redoing streets, if there's a tree that's impeding a sidewalk, we take the tree down and we replace it. If the tree is impeding the power lines, we take the tree down and replace it with a lower cut tree.
That's correct.
Right? And so that would be standard here. If there's a tree that's in the median that doesn't impede a sidewalk or isn't under a power line and being chopped by National Grid, it will remain, yes?
And a third criteria that we look at is also sometimes at the base of these trees, they get so large that if it's the city's wish to put 5-foot wide sidewalks throughout, something has to give there, and it's usually the trunk of the tree. So that is a third criteria we do look at.
I don't remember any of the others.
No, I think that captures most of the repeat concerns, I think.
So with that, if we normally have a public comment period for our common council meeting, if anybody would like to come and provide public comment to the common council, I'd ask you to come up and share your name, your address, and limit your comments to say 3 minutes so that we can take comment from anybody who wishes to address the council. Yes? Sure. Please come right on up and address the common council.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Sure, this isn't too. Okay,
It's a conversation.
I'll hold it. If I hold it, it's better. Does it still work? Did I break it?
Turn it off.
Hello? That wasn't intended to be a mic drop.
Just hold it there.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. My name is Nikki Hartman, and my husband Scott, my daughter Audrey, and I live at 29 Webster Ave. My husband's been a resident there for over 17 years. And our comment is in regard to this project, which we all know. We really are actually looking forward to the improvements. We're grateful to Diana Palmer for responding to our concerns and providing this opportunity to be heard. We really just wanted to share two points that have to do with our perspective. One has to do with safety. The 30 mile an hour speed limit on our road is not generally enforced. And I know that's a layered issue, but cars do tend to speed down our street and have for years. So when we are thinking about this and picturing bike lanes added, that will encourage more traffic, more cyclists to feel that this is safe, as now that it's part of the bike trail. And so we wanted to bring that to your attention. That is a concern. Also, we have many residents on our street backing in and out of their driveways. And so again, now we potentially have 4 lanes of traffic. I mean, not probably all the time, but you could have 2 bicyclists and 2 cars in the same area. So parking is another area that we felt needed to be brought up, because anything other than the share or the shared lane could eliminate all of our parking. And many of us have narrow driveways and on a regular basis shuffle our cars in and out. If I get home and my husband's leaving, I leave my car out, he pulls out, I pull in. But also when we have guests with small children. My father is disabled, and so where will they park? Will they be on North Road? And that brings up, our concern about our neighbors and how will this impact the rest of the neighborhood. And I think that is really it. Also, other people in the community use our Webster Ave and Fort Amherst to park for Crandall Park events. Just the other night at the Balloon Fest, we were on our own lawn just to make room for other people, which we wanted to do. But that would be something lost for the community if we do go with the not shared lane option. So we're not really against the bike lanes, we're just in preference, we prefer the shared lane if we're gonna go in that direction. We feel like it's a compromise and will allow us to continue to live similarly to how we have in the past. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ed Murphy. I live at 49 Webster Avenue. We've lived on the street now for 49 years. I watched the Board of Public Safety meeting the other day on the YouTube channel, and I was appalled to see that there was no consideration of the fact that this lady has just described. Webster Avenue is a very fast street. It's a fast street because we had a fatal accident on North Road in Fort Amherst many years ago. After that fatal accident, they put stop signs in at Fort Amherst and at Garrison, leaving Webster Avenue 1/2 mile street from Bay to Glen and Glen to Bay. When they come around that corner, they'll get speeds as high as 55. I would say the average speed is probably 40 miles an hour. They also didn't take any consideration on what's the impact of the loss of parking on the second option, the full bike lanes where there is no parking. What the impact of the loss of parking is on the 4 streets that enter Webster Avenue: Webster Court, North Road, Edison, and Parker. Certainly, if you're channeling parking onto those streets, I know those folks are probably in the room, they're not going to like it, they don't deserve that. To steal that parking, I think, is basically a slap in the face to the citizens that the council represents. The driveway issue that she mentioned is certainly there. I've seen car versus bike, bike versus car accidents. If the bike runs into the car or the car hits the bike, the driver of that car is liable. It more than likely will result in a lawsuit. Why increase the traffic of bikes, bring it up to increase the possibility of one of those types of accidents? Webster Avenue is an R2 residential street. Everybody on that street is a taxpayer. There are no rentals that I can think of. Matter of fact, the whole neighborhood has maybe just a handful of rentals. Everybody there is a taxpayer on the street. There are no landlords. So they've enjoyed, as I've enjoyed, all the perks of living in the city of Glens Falls, which are many. If you can't park on the street, home health care aides are going to have trouble. Visitors to your house, family gatherings, graduations, garage sales, the list goes on and on. She mentioned the kids, the soccer kids that come. They park on the west end of Webster Avenue, across the street, because they have better access to the field. To pull this parking away, I think is a big mistake. You guys are our representatives. And I ask you to listen to all the facts that these folks have, assess them, assess the validity of the facts, and make your decision appropriately. I think that to accommodate transient bike traffic at the expense of what the citizens of Glens Falls have got used to having and deserve because they're paying for that, I think should be a strong consideration. Thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jim Murphy, 96 Webster Ave, 17 years, wife Mary. First of all, I think it's great that we're fixing up Webster Ave. Clearly, sometimes I feel like I live in a third world country, so much appreciated, thank you. Very opposed to the bike lane for a lot of the reasons that gentleman just said, and for another one, which is, I think it's a solution in search of a problem. I took a few pictures. I've been looking at the street ever since the announcement of this meeting came. I'll pass these around. There are no impediments to bicycle traffic on the street generally. Never more than 5 cars, usually 2 or 3. So for people to be able to travel safely on that street, it's already a given in terms of being able to be over near the curb and not being in the way. As that gentleman pointed out, the real problem is the speed on the street, and if you want to address that, that's a speed bump. It's not a bike lane. Because again, a lot of times there's going to be no bicycles on that street, but there's still people crossing with their dogs and taking their kids for a walk and everything else. There are 3 types of bicycle traffic on that street. There are people who are adults who, clearly ride for pleasure. There are tweens and teens, and there are families with kids. The tweens and teens are always going to ride down the middle of the street. They're not going to use the bike lane. The adults are going to use the bike lane. And then the families, if they have 4 wheels, they're going to still stay on the sidewalk, especially if there's no cracks anymore. I agree that, I understand that there might be a little bit of increased bicycle traffic on the street, but it's not a heavily trafficked street now as it goes to bicycles. See many more on main thoroughfares. As that gentleman pointed out, our car accommodates roughly a street accommodates roughly 80 cars during events over Crandall Ave that would have to be pushed off the street. But our main reason for opposition is a different safety factor, which is, as he mentioned, graduations and birthday parties and everything else. 4 or 5 months out of the year, I know it's a law in our city, but a lot of times the sidewalks aren't terribly well cleaned. If somebody has to go park on another street and walk to your house, it's just not as safe. And I worry about slips and falls. We have, unfortunately, from a demographic point of view, a lot of older and elderly people living on that street, a lot of the same folks, I'm one of them, I'm not casting any aspersions, and a lot of folks visiting people on those streets and have to park half a block or block away and walk in rain and snow just makes no sense. A lot of, my wife and I grew up in small communities in upstate New York, and one of the reasons why we came to Glens Falls and why we live on the street is it's tree lined, it's ample parking, it's just kind of the quintessential American neighborhood. And I think putting those bike lanes in is going to take away from that. Just seeing if I forgot anything. The other thing I would say, and again, it was raised, but it is a concern in our driveway, is that there are about a half a dozen, maybe more driveways in that street that really don't have much parking. We were a 4-car driveway, and then the city came in about 15 years ago and put in a sidewalk in a yard, which we were appreciative of. But that put us down to legally 2 cars. So if I have another person visit our house, they're parking across the sidewalk, according to what the police department tells me, that's illegal because they've ticketed us before. So again, we have a 5-bedroom house. To say that we only can park 2 cars in our home, but I don't know that we would have bought that if we understood that when we moved here. So again, our big concern is, thank you for all the improvements to the street. It's much needed, but please, 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 no bike lane. Thank you.
part of the share, but they're mostly the dentistry. This first sheet, first of all, my name is Sarah Badger. I live on 9 Madison Street in Ward 2. Also, I have some of the fellow neighbors behind me. I've been in my address for 15 years. My neighbors have been here a lot longer. 20, 25, 36 years. I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I've lived in the city as a whole for 22 years. I've lived on Elm, just to give you an idea of where I've lived. I've lived on Oak. And my husband and I bought a house on Madison Street. We moved out of Elm and Oak Street because, as you probably are aware, they can be heavier in the crime areas. So I have lived in Ward 1 as well. Although it was relatively quiet on Oak Street at times. The main problem we're having on Madison Street is that we have a known drug house. It's well documented by neighbors, by multiple agencies. We've had calls there from Glens Falls PD, Warren County Sheriff, New York State Police have been there, CPS has been there. There's a toddler in the upstairs apartment on 14 Madison Street getting exposed to crack cocaine and God knows what else. Judging by some of the individuals that I've seen coming and going, it's likely there's opioids and opiates as well. I would say I've called buildings and codes. We know there's many code violations there in the past. There's probably code violations there now. These drug dealers moved in, I would say, approximately the end of April or early May, and they have just held, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, they have held the entire neighborhood hostage. We are at their mercy. It doesn't matter what time of day you go, and that's why I wanted to give you the spreadsheet to illustrate. I have given this to police officers. They have this, they have the photographs. I have more photographs. This spreadsheet that I'm showing you is, other than a couple of incidents at the beginning, just a 3-hour snippet of one day in July, just to give you an idea of the volume that's going on. And we believe that there's a secondary house that they're working with. It could be on Fulton, it could be on Ridge, it could be on Waite Street. We're not sure, we've clocked them. It's gotta be very close by. But 14 Madison, and sorry to use slang, it's a trap house. It's been taken over. We don't know who exactly is on the lease. We believe his name is Richard Smith. He's the one with the child, we believe, as well. And it's a revolving door of drug dealers. The police are doing the best they can. We know they're understaffed. I know from reading your other agenda notes that you're trying to get new hires and you're having a hard time. I would say increase the starting pay if you want to get them. And I know that's going to be difficult, but I saw their starting pay and I was floored. Yeah, and they've been great. The police have been very helpful. I've spoken, my neighbors have spoken. Officer Mulcahy, Officer Pratt, Officer Tannery, Detective Sergeant Hogan. I've spoken with the lieutenant once. It's just, as soon as they make arrests, it's a revolving door. There's new drug dealers in there. And I can't even tell you how many different people we've seen coming and going from that address. And it's a strain on the neighborhood, it's a strain on our quality of life, it's a strain on the police department and dispatch. And I've, again, read your notes where the city of Glens Falls receives more 911 calls than Warren County.
So I think basically what I'm proposing with this other sheet, and this is a DOJ document, it's a focus on a program that the Manhattan DA did, and it's more of a, well, it's not more of, it's just straight up, it's a civil approach rather than a criminal approach. And basically, to give you the highlights of it is, it's a real property actions and proceedings law statute, section 715. It's a civil proceeding, so no arrests are needed to meet the standard of proof. So it's a much lower burden of proof on the discovery. You just need to show a pattern of drug dealing. It provides the landlord with a strong incentive to move forward with the eviction process, plus it confirms criminal activity by providing access to the landlord of the police records. Again, I believe this would take the strain off of the police department and the dispatch and put it into the hands of the landlord and or the DA prosecutor working with them and the court. We've been told that some of it has to do with bail reform law. I'm not here to get on a soapbox about that, but we've also been told that a judge has some sway in this. All these guys, we've been told, they're repeat offenders and they do other crimes. I've seen, I mean, I can tell you that I've reported the violence of drug dealing, drug use. We've watched bikes get stolen. And just to give you an idea of the weight of the gravity of the violence we're seeing, I myself personally have seen attempted vehicular homicide, where a ripped off customer goes up on the curb, drives up on the sidewalk, nearly hits the porch of 14 Madison, trying to run over the drug dealers. Basically, to get back to the civil litigation, it's much faster than the criminal. I think what you'll find in what I've given you is that it has a fairly high success rate when you look at the statistics. It's also much faster. They were saying somewhere in the realm of, say, 3 to 5 months versus 1 to 3 years for criminal proceedings. We need more help. The police need more help. They're doing everything they can. And our quality of life has diminished. And I'm an adult, and there's children that live on the street, and we're seeing cars driving up on the sidewalk. So, and drug dealers going after people they ripped off with baseball bats. So, I don't know if there's any more else I can share, but I would say that I think this is a viable solution. I'm not suggesting that the city invest this grandiose amount of money to start a program like this, but there's definitely a drug problem, and I think if we can get the Warren County DA's help, or to some degree get this going, if the landlord does not comply with the 2 letters that are written, then I know state statute it's saying will not seize her property, but it says it can go up to a district court, and then it's federal, and it can be federally seized if she does not comply. So.
Can I have your name again? I'm the representative.
Sarah Badger.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Just like the animal.
Sarah, let me give you my number. Can you call my office?
Thank you.
We've got a meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. And I would hope we tried to have more of our neighbors come. They couldn't make it, but you can pretty much talk to anybody on the street, and it's a big problem. Everybody knows it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mike Metzger. I'm a city resident. I live at 14 Crandall Street. I came tonight to share my frustration with the water situation recently. Just to paint the picture, on Saturday, September 16th, starting around 2 p.m., my water was running, I guess you could describe it, Coca-Cola brown. Had neighbors reporting the same thing. There were people on the Glens Falls Facebook group all reporting it. A lot of speculation about maybe it was fire hydrant flushing or a water main break on Glen Street. Unfortunately, there was no official word from city officials all day, probably until, I don't know, maybe 10 hours later. I think I first saw it. It was actually on Diana Palmer's Facebook page, I think sometime around 11 o'clock that night. So look, I get things happen, and I know the city's hard at work trying to fix them, but I just wanted to get it on the record. This kind of thing really disrupts your day. Saturday, it's a day you catch up on things. Forget about just drinking the water. You couldn't do dishes, do laundry. I was even worried. I have a 1-year-old daughter at home. I was worried to rinse her pacifier because it dropped on the floor, So again, I understand. I guess I've learned since the city's communication director stepped down, so I understand it's a Saturday, but I just feel that, in 2023, waiting 9 or 10 hours to find out what's exactly going on with the water is just unacceptable. I think it also exposed a real gap that we have in local media coverage, and nothing against the Post-Star, but I know it's their corporate heads have decided that they're not going to be a daily paper anymore. But they didn't report on it until the next day, and they simply just reiterated the press release that the city put out the last night. Their story said, spikes in the freshwater distribution system at about 1, 2, and 4 p.m., resulting in the release of particles from the interior of drinking water pipes from the increased water pressure. While no threat to human health, the mineral particles discolor the water, the press release says. So this is, if it was a spike in usage, I'm a little confused, because I did find out on that Saturday the Water and Sewer Department did put out a statement where they said the city is aware that some areas are having water problems today. We're working to rectify the situation. If your water comes out dirty, please run all your faucets, including outdoor spigots, and then the water should run clear. Thank you for your patience. So I want to acknowledge, I see the city's working on it, and I guess I found out the next day that there was, they were communicating about it. Unfortunately, I'm not one of the Water and Sewer Department's 101 followers on Facebook, so I didn't find out about it until the next day. And then again, if the cause was a spike in usage, something's not adding up to me, because their solution presented was for everyone to run all their faucets, including their outdoor spigots. So look, I love this city. I appreciate the work you all do. I know you're not quitting your day jobs for what you guys are doing. And I'm not here to yell and complain. I really hope I'm not coming off that way. But I just want to get it on the record and say, I know it sounds routine. The Water and Sewer Department has an explanation of what happened, but I've lived at my current address for the last 5 years. I've lived in the city for 10 years, and I've never seen this before, and I've seen people on the Facebook group saying they've lived here 25 and 30 years, and they've never seen the water like this before. So what I'm asking is just if you guys can please dig deep and find us some real answers, or maybe get an opportunity for us to get this information out on what is causing this, because again, I know the usage is high, but I've never seen this before, and I just thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just to follow up, one thing that you said about our communications is that we are investing in something to, when somebody reports a concern, that as we get an answer, it will actually respond back to you. We're in the integration step of that right now. We should be able to roll that out sometime, either in a couple of months or maybe even sooner. But I feel you. I got phone calls all through ever since I was elected 2 years ago. I never had a problem before, and then once I was elected, it was like, hey Ben, why don't you go in and run your faucet right now? It's all brown. So I've heard it. So I hear it. I feel it. It shouldn't look like that. We pay a lot for our water, and it's very frustrating when it's not worthy of running a wash, and where you're worried about it the sediment building up in your water heater. There's a number of reasons. I know it's like the water department said that the water is safe, but it's very discouraging to see all that discoloration. So thank you for reporting that.
Good evening. Hopefully that's not too loud. My name is Thomas Toomey. I live at 33 Webster Avenue. I just want to circle back to the bike project. You know, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for hearing our comments and concerns. You know, thank you guys for the presentation. Thank you, Diana, for hearing our concerns and passing out those flyers. You know, really, I'll say I share the same sentiments as a lot of the opposition to the bike path that was voiced earlier. So I have some notes, but I think that really Webster in this project, it's just not the right street for the designated bike path and no parking. The idea of going from bike path on two sides to one side and then to no bike paths at all back to the sharrows or shared lanes. I feel like we're really just kind of forcing the bike path on the street. We already heard there's kind of some confusion as to how that would work, and I think, like, heaven forbid a kid coming down the street decides that they want to cross from the bike path after it's eliminated to the other side, to the other bike path. We've already heard about the fast traffic on the street. We don't have a stop sign there in the middle. I would just hate for that confusion to play into some sort of accident, so that's my concern there. From the YouTube meeting that was recorded and published, there was a lot of references to what was done on Maple Street and on Murray Street there. My wife and I, we went and drove those streets just to take a look. It just feels completely different. You know, we're fully residential. We don't have businesses. We don't have parking lots. And again, it's just not the right street, and it's a different feel. Logistically, we've talked about how would we handle our garbage cans on a weekly basis being put out into the bike path, or the city service that's offered with collecting lawn trimmings, leaves, you know, I guess brush that's put out on the street. So there's concerns there. And I guess just to reiterate what Nikki said and what we heard earlier, just sort of the sense of community with people being able to come and visit. I love seeing for Memorial Day Parade and the Balloon Fest and Friday night concerts at Crandall Park, people coming out and lining our street and being able to walk over and enjoy all that our city has to offer. So I really feel like the bike paths as proposed don't make sense. I myself am a cyclist. I love biking the streets of Glens Falls, and I enjoy using bike lanes, but for Webster it just really doesn't make sense. Thank you.
Hi, Charlotte Jennings, 28 Webster, for about 35 years or so. I just want to bring us back, as my predecessor there did. You started by saying this is about safety. Nowhere did I hear anything, any data, like there's so many accidents. And if there are accidents on Webster and there are none on Garrison, for example, which is this parallel street there, why can't we move the bikes to Garrison and cut down the traffic on Webster and cut down the number of accidents if it's really a safety issue? I do believe there are some things besides counting the number of accidents. I tried to go through and look at the number of kids, the number of dogs, the number of elderly, and the number of group homes, for example, that are on Webster. There are a lot. And there are other streets in the city that have fewer of each of those groups that might better handle the bikes. I mean, I have friends that bike by my house. They live the other side of Glen Street, and they make a loop around, and sometimes they come down Glen, but sometimes they go down to other streets. And I don't see that we have that many kids out on bikes on Webster relative to some of the other places. And I don't know where the counts were made. And so I can't really, and I didn't go out and try and do it. I'm beyond those years of sitting at the corner and counting things to provide data. But I think there are questions that haven't been answered yet. And I hope you hold up and get those answered. You've got a lot of my neighborhood here, in case you don't know. And I think we're all concerned. I certainly can barely get 2 cars in my driveway. And, you know, I mean, I park out on the street for Balloon Fest and things, so my friends and neighbors can put 2 cars in my driveway and walk down to Crandall. There's a lot of that kind of sharing that goes on that I'm not sure you consider if you're putting in new curbs and other things. And if you recognize my street address, I'm the one with the pollinator garden, and I'm really concerned about the trees, not just the pollinators, I do. And when you take down those trees, which have been happening over the last decade, lots more than my first 20 years here, we need to take a look. Do we have money? Are we replacing the trees? Are we doing the things that will keep this the city I moved here for, which was wide streets, wide sidewalks so I could walk a dog and a kid at the same time, and trees to bring shade to keep down the cost of our air conditioning. There's a lot of things we need to work on, and I'll hope you consider all of them. I'm sure you'll do some of them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Beth Wagner. My husband Joe and I live at 31 Webster Avenue. And I have a few questions, but as these have been proposed, I am not in favor of adding these bike lanes. I'm in favor of what you're calling a share-o, what we're doing right now. Bicycles share the road with cars, and I think speed limit, if that's what it takes, maybe patrolling a little more often, although after hearing about the drug problems, this is small potatoes. So, but I'm not in favor of this as it's proposed. We need parking on the street at least on one side. So I don't know, maybe we could have a bike lane on one side of the street and parking on the other side. I don't know. I know you're trying to comply with federal regulations, and that's a pickle. So this brings up my question. I understand from Chris that this was a transportation improvement program, and this is what generated this whole process initially, was because we've got to get the traffic lights squared away at Fire Road and Webster and Glen. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So because of that, is that why we sought federal funding?
Well, the city seeks federal funding for transportation programs all the time. Anytime we can get the state or the county, the state or the federal government to pay for road improvements, we do. And we have a transfer, it's called the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council, and they funnel those monies to the city of Glens Falls. And so we're constantly, any kind of time we're doing, we knew we needed to do road work on Webster. We knew that we wanted to improve the sidewalks as well. We knew we had a concern with the crossing of youth and students coming across Glen and Webster, and so that's how it all came. And so every time that something like that happens, we go, well, we need to repave Webster at the same time, and then we say, Aaron at Greater Glens Falls Transportation Corporation, can we get on the tip for this? Is this a project that qualifies? And he says, yes. And so that's what we do. And anytime we're replacing sidewalks, anytime we're paving a road, then we look at what our options are in today's standards for doing that.
Right,
And another
okay.
thing to
So,
consider too is that between Crandall Park and the bike path, Webster's the only one with a traffic control device. So that makes it much safer for people to cross, whether it's pedestrians or bicyclists. And the bikeway is very, very well used.
oh, it is. I'm a bicyclist. Joe's a bicyclist, right? We like to bike, but we ride in the road and we cut through Fort Amherst or Garrison and we
There's other
go
people of
pick
different
up
abilities, and that's kind of where we're looking at.
Yeah.
Is
So-
to give them the ability to feel like they can drive safely on the roads. The Glens Falls did a survey at, not this past summer, but the summer previous during Take a Bike. And the number one impediment to people using bicycles in Glens Falls was not feeling safe on the road. And the number one thing that they identified to make them feel safe was dedicated bike lanes.
And so,
that's where this
yeah.
is coming from.
Yeah.
It's not coming from nowhere.
Yeah, no, I realize that, because that's why I don't choose to ride down Glen Street or Bay, because I don't feel safe on those roads.
But think of this too, when you're going from Crandall Park to the bikeway, that's a huge draw between those two places.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a place that we're looking to make things feel more safe.
Mm-hmm. And so I understand that this going from Webster and it's gonna cut through to Douglas, is that correct? It's gonna cross Bay?
This project is just about Webster right now, but yes,
Mhm.
we recognize that at the end of Douglas is the bike path.
Right.
And so that would be next steps if we choose to do it, yes.
Well, I've gotta have parking on our street. We have to have parking on our street. We have to have parking at least on one side. And I'm not clear, I'll step down, but I'm not clear on option 1 and option 2. I don't know if everyone else is clear and I'm not, but option 1 is.
Option 1 is the bikes ride with the traffic in what's called the Sharrow today.
Okay.
And then the parking remains. And option 2 is bike lanes for wherever the road is wide enough to have bike lanes, and where it's not, it turns to Sharrows.
Okay.
In the narrower parts of
So
the street.
Sharrow's still on the table?
Parts of the Sharrows, yes.
Not the whole street as a
Oh, wait,
Sharrow?
I'm sorry, yes. Those are the two options. One is no bike lanes, the other is bike lanes and Sharrows where the street is too narrow for the bike lane. Well, if you're going to have a bike lane, you need to have a street that's wide enough. They have to be a certain width, and they have to follow certain regulations. So there are, like, the very end of Webster is too narrow.
Right, I understood
for
that,
So,
yeah. So option 1 is Sharrow with parking?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mary Beth,
Thank you for
it's,
clarifying.
if you go down Broad Street, that's Sharrow's. You see the triangles with, or the arrows with the bicyclists, that's a Sharrow lane. Our Murray Street, we just did Murray Street, and those are bike lanes.
It's also Sharrow.
I haven't looked at
And
Murray
and
yet.
Sharrow's,
so-
and
Yeah,
Sharrow's,
and
yeah,
Sharrow's.
because it narrowed down, so if you want to go take a look at what,
I will.
that would be a
Okay.
good example.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I just want to respond to the thing about the survey, Jim Murphy. If you go back and talk to those same people who took the survey, in their mind, I'm sure they're envisioning streets like Stewart's, down near Stewart's on Glen Ave, where some of those side streets are packed lined with cars. I want to point out that there is hardly any cars parking on our street. And when there is cars parking, it's a graduation, it's a birthday party, it's, you know, all those other things. And it's, you know, a few hours here on a Saturday occasionally, a few hours on a Sunday occasionally, not much during the week. There is no danger in driving down Webster except when cars are speeding, and that's the issue. And the bike lane isn't going to solve that. It's not going to make people feel safer.
Well, actually, that is one of the treatments done to give a road diet, is to narrow the road surface and put in biking infrastructure. So that actually has an effect of slowing down traffic.
Yeah, and so does having trees in the road. The studies show that it reduces speed by 3 to 15%, and we're taking down the the trees. So for a period of time, I know we're putting new trees, lower trees, but
you've got trees that are diseased.
I understand that, and I'm in favor of it. We're on the same page on that. But I'm just saying there are a lot of different ways to accomplish what you want, and a bike path and bike lanes, I just don't feel are the right ones.
Thank you.
My name is Sherry Ankeny, and I live at 7 Madison Street. One of the incidences that happened this summer was one of the clientele, or one of the people who was visiting the houses that we're talking about, was also a roofer. And in a matter of 48 hours, he had scammed probably 8 different houses of about $5,000. So I'm wondering if he was going around saying he could do slate work, basically getting money just to buy his drugs. So I'm wondering, is there a program or anything that the city should know about or create or anything like that to spread those scammers? Because my husband and I were one of them, and we were on the smaller end of only $200, but we saw him talking to another family down the street, and we pulled off and talked to the gentleman and said, look, don't pay him any money. Is there anything out there to share that information so other people don't get scammed when this person drifts in and out of your neighborhood? He actually knocked on their neighbor's door at 5:30 in the morning, asking for another $100 for a tow for his truck. So is there anything like that now, or suggestion of what we should do with something like that?
I'll speak to the police chief.
Okay. We've all had conversation with the police, so we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna touch it for
I'll make that.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for giving us the time. Megan McDavid, 57 Webster. I lived there just a little shy of 2 years now, and I just kind of want to reiterate with my neighbors that one of the best things of living so close to Crandall Park is being able to have friends and family come visit us and be able to park and go to events, and just most recently the Bloom Fest. You know, I parked on the side of the street to allow friends to park close, you know, in our driveway and things, and also the speed, especially when you get towards my end, right past Parker, going towards Bay Road, the speed is just extremely fast. Like, I wouldn't even let my son play in the front part of my yard. I'll make sure he's on the side because the speed is really fast. And I just think it would be kind of like detrimental to our area to lose that much parking for events. You know, free parking, be able to walk down to, you know, Friday night music in the park, and even soccer games and baseball, and, you know, my son's 8 years old, so we're in Crandall Park almost daily. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Maglione, 68 Webster Avenue. I've been there 20 years. Love the neighborhood, love Webster Avenue. Totally against bike lanes. I don't want to lose my parking on the street. Don't want to lose putting brush out. I don't want to lose the traffic for the parades, fireworks, 4th of July. Love it. I'm in favor of the share roads. Once that road is paved, it's going to be a speedway. It is already, but it's going to be worse once it's all done. And I think with the share roads, with the markings in the center of the roads, it's going to alert motorists to slow down. You're sharing the road with traffic. And that's basically all I have to say about that. Thank you.
My name's John Fair. I live at 17 Webster Avenue. It's the west end of Webster Avenue. Two things I'm really upset about. I didn't know anything about this until a neighbor came to my house and said, "Hey, John, did you know about this?" My wife didn't know about it. The city knows my address because I have to pay taxes all the year. There's no reason that this was not addressed to the people on Webster Avenue. And everybody's nodding, yeah, well, why? Why not?
John, this isn't something that we take public, we're happy to take your public comment, and we're glad you're here, but this isn't when the city is doing the street and doing sidewalks, we follow the state guidelines and we improve the public right away.
This is more than just a sidewalk.
It is.
A lot more than just, you're changing the neighborhood. You are. I'm going to praise you. You're changing that neighborhood by putting those 2 bike lanes in. Also, today, there's a state house or state home, I don't know what you call it.
Group home.
Pardon me?
Group home.
Group home. Well, it's on the map, but kitty corner. Now, sometimes they're busy, sometimes they're not. I think at Culvert they slow down a bit. That is on the corner of Webster Court and Webster, across the street. They have a 2-car garage facing Webster Court. 2 cars, maybe they can squeeze in 3. That parking lot was full today, and they had 4 cars on Webster. Now, what are you going to do? Tell them they can't park there? What are you going to do? What's your answer? You're telling everybody nobody can park on the street. The state can do it, but we can't? Well, you don't know, but that's what you should do before you make these proposals.
Well, they can park on Webster Court.
There's no more room.
Well, and John, did you know?
I don't know what ward you in. Sometime go over to Webster Court and stand there.
I walked over there plenty of times.
Well, I was there today. I live there.
There's
I say,
places that people can park.
no, there's not. Keith, the guy who lives across the street is always complaining there's not enough.
I understand people complain about things, but there's places to park.
I'm sorry, sir, you're wrong.
So please.
Unless you can park right on the road, but you're wrong.
I've seen people park on Webster Court before, so.
Not today, there wasn't enough room. And I'm not going to sit there and argue with you. I live over there. Everything else has been said about the garbage. Could you tell me the answer to that question right now?
Which one?
When people put garbage cans out on the street, where are we supposed to put them?
You would put them at your curb where you're supposed to.
On the curb, so that's in the bike path.
They're not supposed to be on the street.
They're not supposed to be on the
They're
street.
supposed to be in between the sidewalk and the street.
Oh,
They're not
okay.
supposed
I go to the dump, so, but I know, I see it all the time.
Garbage cans on the street or your yard debris, they're bags and they should be on your property, on the curb.
That's gonna be citywide, or is that just our street? Well, it should be, then they ought to enforce it, because it's not enforced.
It's true. And so, same with
Also-
parking, John. Did you know right now on city streets and all neighborhood streets that there's 2-hour limit parking? Did you know in front of your home right now there's 2-hour limit? There is. We don't impose it, we don't enforce it because we don't have law enforcement to do it.
I understand
We're not
that.
looking to ticket you. But what we do is that if your neighbors, there are, say, a couple dozen homes in Glens Falls where the neighbors are kind of at war with each other. So what we do is we've left that parking statute has been there since before I was a child.
Okay.
And so we don't regularly enforce it. And in this case, if there was an event or you have a neighbor that comes and parks in front of that on that sidewalk, the same thing would go. Kids driving down on that bike lane would go around your car and continue on. And we're not going to ticket that at all unless somebody, again, your neighbor calls because he's angry that you parked across the street from his driveway. And Webster's a little more wider, so I'm sure that you don't have that concern, but there are in many streets in the city of Glens Falls. So just so you're aware, and I'm not advocating either way, right? We have 2 options from this engineer, and I just want you to know that. We haven't decided, and we're glad to have your input. I heard very clearly that the neighborhood, the residents of Webster do not want to limit their parking. They believe it's actually more dangerous to have bicycle lanes than not. That is not the conventional wisdom, but I am listening to you and we're hearing it, we're recording it. So I don't want it, I want to respect your input. And I want to make sure you feel heard because you're being heard. But there is currently a 2-hour parking limit in all throughout the city of Glens Falls. And we just don't enforce it. And there's an overnight parking. And if we catch you there once a week, lucky, because we don't have the officers, the manpower to patrol all night long. But right now, there's no parking overnight from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Those are the current parking laws. And I'm sure that if we put bike lanes on both sides of Webster and you're parked in front of your home, that's most likely not going to be ticketed either. Right now we have one parking enforcement officer who works 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday only, and he only patrols the downtown city streets. So just wanted to share some information with you because you asked a question. Okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Joe Wagner, 31 Webster. I ride motorcycles, I ride bicycles, y'all know me. I am definitely for option one if we have to do this at all. I don't want to see that street look industrial. I love this town, it's so laid back. I came from Metropolis, St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay. I was just there last week and got a real dose of it again. I bicycle down the street, catch the trail. That needs to be fixed at the end of whatever the name of that street is. I've only been there 9 years, I still don't know the streets, okay? But that would be nice if you just knocked out, if you put a little path there so we wouldn't drive it over the lawn and try to not make eye contact with the people that own their homes on left and right. But our street, I love the way that it's so laid back. The culverts, the beat up concrete, curbs. I lived on an island, everything is beautiful and wealthy, and I found a house, somebody could live there, for many years. Now I live here, it's laid back. We have a problem on that street, and sure, it needs paving, but if all this is contingent, you follow exactly those rules, I guess we'll pass. Because you're gonna wreck the nature of our neighborhood. If we can't leave, if signs will say no parking 24 hours a day, thanks, Bill, I appreciate your saying that, you had an indication there, because that's just, the signs would just be horrible. I don't want to industrialize my neighborhood, okay? One way to fix the speeding is something I fought vehemently, and my long-suffering wife knows this. I raised hell in St. Pete about them, speed bumps, but they can be speed tables, not just bumps, and they can be done very well, and I'd be happy to share information with people at a different time and how to do that, so it's not just horrible. It's not done badly over by the YMCA. I come down the street on my Harley. I don't go fast in my own neighborhood, but I hear these kids flying by. I know they're going 60, 70 miles an hour, even 50. I come down on the street, I'm slowing down my car after coming off of Bay and whatever else is around here to that street. If we and the fact that the seat's kind of crumbly keeps our speeds down for those of us that care about our cars, because we know it's going to cause them to rattle after a while. Kids don't care. We were those kids. So I think a speed bump somewhere between Edison, is that the name of the street, and Bay would be a great place right around there, a speed table. And one that would bring them down and maybe lower the speed limit to say 30 miles an hour on the street. Can we even do that?
Well, we'll ask the Board of Public Safety. It is 30, just so you know. The speed limit is 30.
Maybe put a sign there, because I sure didn't know it. If we could slow the speed down.
It's 30 miles an hour in all of the city.
Really?
So, yeah, you can pretty much just count on that.
Okay. Well, now I don't have excuses. They stop me.
It says city speed limit as you come into the city from Queensbury, 30 miles an hour. So you shouldn't need any more reminders.
Ben, I do 35, 40. But okay,
so your own worst enemy.
You know it. But a speed bump somewhere would be sufficient, and when they go up, it jiggles the car when they're made right. It's unsettling. That's what they're designed for. The best ones are in Sarasota, Florida. I was just there seeing them again, and I didn't even know about this stuff coming, because how would I? And I just got back in time to get
The
a chance
difference
to do so.
between Glens Falls, New York and Sarasota, Florida is snow.
Well, like over
And-
by the
and massive
YMCA,
incomes.
There's a bump by the YMCA.
Yeah, and that's actually not a bad one, that would do the job.
Well, that's also up a hill.
We can ask the Board of Public Safety to look
Yeah.
at speed traffic control.
And I guess you can't put a stop signs on our street because they don't meet DOT compliance because it's not a four-way intersection.
It has to do with the New York State traffic.
I think that's-
Roads have to have certain characteristics where
And I-
you're not allowed to put, say, a stop sign in just to slow traffic
Right,
down. It's crazy.
right, that's kind of, if it's not federal, the states would adopt the same standards. I've been down this issue before in another town.
We'll talk to the Board of Public Safety.
It would slow them down. You know, nobody wants to see radars in the street, and they're only temporary, and you never catch the guys. But that's a good solution. Option one would be okay for me if you had to do it to get the grant money, but I don't want to give up our parking on the streets, and I don't want to be cheating the rules. We already learned that in order to survive in our world, you've got to break laws every day. You got to park wrong, you've got to speed, you've got to whatever, you know. Everything's, I just found out we're putting our trash cans out where they shouldn't be all the time. But if I do put it out, I'm going to destroy a garden, you know, where it's supposed to be, or it's just going to fall over. So, and then the machine would destroy my trees, just picking up and putting the trash things. So they all go in the streets everywhere.
Yeah. Agreed.
So we don't want this. We really feel it will impact the value of our homes. And you say you buy this house, but you can't park out front. You know, and it'll be an issue. That's pretty much all I have to say for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Andy Johnson, my wife Lori, and I are relative babies to the neighborhood at 7 years at 40 Webster. I reiterate some concerns with the loss of parking. That was one of the huge draws for us when we purchased the home, was comparatively speaking in the city, it was twice as wide as a lot of other streets. The only concern I ask you to consider with the bike lanes is every day when I'm driving my kids to school and I wait at the intersection of Webster and Glen, thank you for trying to deal with the traffic lights and people blowing the lights and the murder of that intersection. I'm worried about the width at the end of that road. And I understand that this project doesn't probably widen the road at the end at all. So if where I live in the middle, it's nice and wide, there'd be room for these lanes. As you funnel bikes to the end, as a car is waiting in the right-hand turn lane and the left-hand turn lane and the incoming onto Webster, there is not an inch of wiggle room. So to merge bikes in at that intersection, I'm actually concerned with the safety of encouraging people to ride bikes to that intersection and then having to mingle with cars in that intersection. So just something I hope you can consider, because I'd hate to see something bad come from such a great project. Thank you.
Good evening. Hello, Norabelle Greenberger, 64 Garfield, one of the co-founders of Bike Glens Falls, here with
Ethan Gaddy, 38 Cunningham.
So thank you very much for holding this public discussion on this project. For those that don't know, Bike Glens Falls is a community-led bike advocacy organization made up of representatives from across the community that's really looking at how to make biking more comfortable, connected, and safe. And one of our big pushes has been to come up with a citywide bike plan that looks at what are the best streets for bike improvements to go. How can this really be considered a kind of comprehensive network to get to destinations? I really want to applaud the city on the adoption of the Complete Streets policy, looking at bike improvements as part of any of your repaving projects, such as this project, with the new bike improvements connecting to the feeder canal. I think from the feedback tonight, what you hear is really the importance of coming up with that citywide plan, and I really want to, again, encourage the city, and I appreciate the conversations that we've had and the interest in pursuing that, because I think that there are a lot of opportunities to engage the public and to come up with a real vision for how to improve biking comprehensively throughout the city and to connect to these different places. I don't know if you want to add anything, Ethan?
Yeah, just a note on some of the public engagement that was done we did do a digital survey probably 2 years ago, asking about people's preferences. And then we did a bike infrastructure demonstration project around one city block, in which we asked residents what sort of bike infrastructure they preferred, whether it be a sharrow, a protected bike lane, or what have you. We did find, of course, that people certainly prefer to have a buffered, protected bike lane. But you can also ask someone if they want a hamburger or filet mignon. They're going to say they want the filet mignon. But when it comes time to what they want to pay for, it's a little bit different. And in this situation, we have to think about the trade-offs in terms of parking and neighborhood change. And I think that, we've heard from a lot of people here tonight that one of the, if the issue is safety, and we're thinking about how to solve for that, perhaps it's more of a traffic calming situation where maybe the bike lanes for parking isn't the preferred thing for the neighborhood. Maybe it is slowing down traffic. So I'm certainly happy to know that this is not the final draft, and that there's an opportunity for the design consultant to consider additional traffic calming measures while also paying attention to those key intersections. I think that would be fantastic, because this is a really this east-west route between Crandall Park and the Warren County Bikeway is extremely important for the overall bike network. Just how we get there to be determined. So thank you.
Could I ask you a quick question? And I applaud your group, because I think we need to have the bike discussion as much as we possibly can. Does your group have a recommended plan for the city of Glens Falls for where bike routes would be? Because it's interesting to listen to what everybody said here tonight, but I'll just give you an example. I traveled through the state of Vermont today, and what bothers me about driving through the state of Vermont is they built divided highways here, and then all of a sudden they stopped, and then there isn't another one for 80 miles away. And I'm wondering, and I'm not just talking about Webster Avenue, this subject is going to come up again and again and again, because fortunately we're in a good position to get some federal money to be able to do these things. And so I was just wondering, because I looked at the Webster Avenue bike trail, and without giving, or bike lanes, and without giving an opinion one way or the other, I looked at it and I said, well, it doesn't connect to anything on Bay Street, so you get done coming down the bike lanes on Webster Avenue to get to Bay Street, then what? And it doesn't connect to anything on Glen Street, and I didn't know whether there was a plan or a map or whatever, and I'm asking you that question now. Is there that we city should be taking a look?
Monument Street is right across from Webster.
Pardon me?
Monument Street is right across from Webster. For Crandall Park.
Right.
You're saying it doesn't connect to anything.
I'm saying it doesn't connect to another bike.
Yeah, no, I understand.
That's my question. My question is, right, but my question is of this gentleman. I'm just wondering.
Councilman, I understand your question. Yeah, I do. I certainly agree with you that it's important to focus on network connectivity, right? If we're gonna have one piece of infrastructure, how does it fit into the next one? So currently there is not a complete bicycle master plan for the city, but the hope is that the volunteer group, in conjunction with the city, which has expressed support, that we can get something for the city in partnership with AGFTC.
With AGFTC.
Yeah.
My biggest concern was that when we looked at Webster, how wide it was compared to many of the other streets we're looking at. And if there's such overwhelming concern about losing parking on Webster, if Webster's not wide enough, I can't name 3 other streets in Glens Falls that are. But we don't have to answer that now. You and Aaron, and we're going to get together, and we're going to create a master plan. We're going to take the AGFTC bike plan and the beginnings of the Glens Falls bike plan, and make sure they jive together. And width of street is a huge limitation, right? We just eliminated half the parking just to have sharrows on Maple Street, right? With no bike lane, because it's not wide enough at any point. And I thought, wow, I would have thought neat, but I didn't realize the width of the street, and we had the same engineer do this, and we said, no, there can't be. And I went, oh, okay, geez, what a shame. And now Webster, again, they proposed to us two different options, one with sharrows and one with bike lanes, because it was wide enough to do it. And I gotta be honest, I thought, wow, what a great opportunity to put bike lanes in. And so with overwhelming support of folks saying, not here, we don't want to lose this, I wonder when we start to meet and look at this, how many streets would we actually, you know, even if you were to give up all your, I mean, first of all, if the width of Webster isn't wide enough for parking and bike lanes, I can't, right? I mean, you know, I mean, the only other thing we were thinking of that originally in that plan was to look at maybe half of Glen going one way, and the other half being parking, and then half of Bay going the other way, and the other half parking, to try to connect downtown with our neighborhoods. That's one of the conversations we had. But I could only imagine that all those people on that side of Glen would be just as upset as the folks on Webster. So it's something for us to consider. You're right, we need to continue to get together and come up with that long-term plan, and we'll learn as we go, right? We learn as we go. Maybe one of the reasons we had very little concern about our redoing of all of Dix Avenue, that major corridor, is because bike lanes weren't part of that plan. Imagine if we had considered it. And it wasn't me, right? I wasn't the mayor at the time, and it wasn't in the engineering plan, but I could only imagine how much. So anyway, thank you. Thanks for coming today.
No, thank
we
you.
look forward to work. We need to find a way to make sure that we're walking, biking, and traffic safe in Glens Falls, and we're happy to work with you on that in our future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for taking the holistic perspective.
Yeah,
I think it's important to remember that, you know, it's about being safe, comfortable, and connected, and the solution is not always bike lanes, right? It might just be slowing down traffic.
Yeah, oh sure.
Coming up with creative solutions.
And if we had a list of those streets, right, the concerns of the folks on Webster are almost identical to the ones on Lexington, right? We have the favorite cut across streets. Webster's been one since I was a child, right? And so has Lexington to cut across, and then Lexington down to Sanford to get to Quaker, right? And they all have that need. And what we're learning in the Board of Public Safety is that you can't just add a stop sign. All right, it's illegal. I'm like, I thought that's what stop signs were for, right? So we're learning, and we'll progress and make sure that we continue to address the complete streets goals, right? Of making every street as pedestrian safe as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim Reed, I live at 74 Webster and also own 78 Webster. And I'll keep it short, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. Almost everybody here is from Webster, and I agree with everyone about the bike lanes. Two questions. One is, will we lose our yard waste pickup privileges?
No.
With bike lane, okay. In 2 weeks, both sides of the street are piled high. This question is for the city attorney. What happens the first time somebody tries to go in the bike lane that leaves in front of my house, prohibit them from doing it, they pull around it, get hit by a car. I assume I get sued, you get sued, New York State gets sued, and that's not preventable. And it will happen if it's a designated bike lane, and it's the only place that we can put our yard waste. And that's all. I mean, you can't answer that tonight, I know, but that's something to think about. Okay.
Thank you. Not seeing any more. Oh, sorry.
One more. I'll make it quick. Scott Stevens, I live at 35 Webster. I've been there since 2017. Thank you, Diana, for answering my email and giving me all the information. I'm going to echo what everybody else in the neighborhood has said, and I just want to point out that, I mean, we're basically talking about 1 block length of two-way bike lanes here, because at Edison it cuts down to a sharrow on one side, then it cuts down to a sharrow on the other side by the cemetery, So, I mean, we're going to disrupt a neighborhood and lose 80 or 100 parking spots for one block of double bike lane. And, you know, I think Charlotte said that the point of this whole thing was safety, and we haven't seen any data. I'm sure there is data somewhere. You don't just say that it's safer to do something. But, you know, is it safer to do this for a half a street? Or, you know, if it went from end to end, maybe our opinions would be a little bit different. But, I mean, we're talking a bike lane for half of our street. And then it gets narrower, and then another quarter of the street gets narrower again. So, including all these other good arguments for, you know, yard waste and parking and where are we gonna, how are we gonna back out of our driveways if there's a bike lane there. I mean, we're doing all this for one block of bike lane. It doesn't connect Bay to Glen, you know, any better than Webster does right now with Sharrow's, basically Sharrow's shared lane in both directions. So yeah, I'm firmly for option one, Sharrow's. But yeah, I mean, it's one block. It doesn't go from end to end. If it went from end to end, it would be different, but our street's not wide enough all the way through for that. My neighbor, Mr. Johnson, made a really good point about the traffic light at the west end. I'm excited for time, you know, a signal light, not on a timer. That'll be great. That side of the street is not wide enough for 3 car lanes and a bike to be in the middle waiting to make a left turn there at that light. I think that would be dangerous.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Matt Conrick. I'm at 82 Webster, so I'm across from the cemetery. Appreciate the conversation, and I agree that a comprehensive bike system for the city should be looked at. But for us on Webster, the idea of not having parking is a hardship. I can share that for my family, I've got 80-year-old parents, I've got grandkids that will be in the mix, and for my family to be able to come and visit, there is no place for us to park. And asking my 80-year-old parents to go down a side street and then walk is unsafe. We will end up parking on the streets, which means that bikes will have to swerve around us, which means that they are back into traffic. It's not a safety, it's not an adequate safety plan. I believe that if we want to look at safety for Webster, there are other means, dropping speed limit, making sure that it is monitored for speeders. I think that's very important. But for us, as a hardship for not being allowed to park on the street, it's not reasonable for us as a Webster community. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment, but I don't know how much wait till new business, would you prefer that? I know this is
I don't have a preference, so you certainly welcome.
Yeah, you know, just a little bit of the history on this, I think I've shared with some of. Can you hear me? Okay. Just a little bit of the history on this, I think I've shared with some of you, but back in 2018, I was approached by parents whose kids had to cross that intersection to get to Kensington. So the kids who lived on that side of the street had to cross, and they were very concerned about safety. So at that time, we engaged I can never say it, the traffic, AGFTC, and we ended up doing a traffic study of that area in 2019. At the same time, as I'm sure you all know, there's been long-standing drainage issues on Webster, and I get lots of calls about pooling of water, and so we wanted to use this funding to address both of those issues, to deal with the pedestrian safety and to deal with water runoff, sidewalks, paving, all of those things. All of that is really positive for your street. I hope you feel that way. And I'm really grateful that we were able to get funding and that we worked on this. I do think that, I'm hearing that it's not standard to engage the public, but I think if my street was suddenly going to become no parking and I didn't know about it, I'd be pretty upset. So I do think when we're going to make a significant change like that, we do need to engage the public and hear their feedback. I think this was helpful for all of us to hear what you all think. And I also think your comments are very reasonable, and it sounds like you're not against this completely, you just want us to not take the parking away on the street. Is that what I'm hearing from everybody? Okay, so, you know, my request is that we seriously consider the feedback from these residents and, you know, consider that option. And also, I just want to put out there that most of this is really good for your neighborhood, so I hope you see that too. That's it.
If we're doing this, I was going to wait, but I'll ask my question now. When I was looking at this, one of the things, in Ben and I, we've talked about this, a lot of us have talked about this, is traffic counting devices. I think that's important on this road. We really need to consider it when we're designing this roadway, whether it's traffic humps or tables or whatever, bump outs, things like that. I think it's important that we do that. I agree that this street is pretty traveled by a lot of vehicles going very fast, and I think we need to address it just like we need to address in other areas of our city. But we have a perfect opportunity to do it on this street, and I really hope we take advantage of that opportunity. So, all right?
Absolutely.
If I could have a comment, please. I'd just like to say, I really appreciate you all being here, because as part of the council, we often get together and we talk about decisions, but we don't have the public input. And we need the public input. It's so important to have the public input. And I will tell you, we have council meetings every 2 weeks, and this room is empty. Okay? And it's important for you all to tell us what you're thinking. We're trying to make the best decisions that we can. But if we don't hear from you, we're trying to do the best that we can. So we appreciate you being here. And don't think that you are not being heard, but you have not been heard because, well, I'm sure I hope Diana has. But, you know, as the council, we appreciate you all coming so that we can hear you. And I'm telling you, I keep saying this all the time throughout the city. The council is the decisions that we made, we talk about, and we do the best that we can. But when we hear from the public, it makes a difference. We need your input. So don't think that you're not being heard. You're not being heard because we don't hear you. And we want to hear you. And I really mean that. So we appreciate you being here. And please hear that you are being heard. And thank you for coming.
Jeremy, I just have a quick question, and then I want to applaud just what Mary just said. The people that are here, we need to listen to you. So if we get this grant from the federal government, do we have to implement some biking piece into Webster?
I can answer that one. No, that's why the two options are there. The one is the.
So we really didn't have to pick one or the other.
We don't.
Just those are the
Those are the two options recommended by the Creighton and Manning due to the width of this thing. If the road was more narrow, you wouldn't have any option, like we did on Maple, right? So you don't have to include bikes.
Thank you.
But we do have a goal of complete streets where we're looking at every street we have and trying to increase pedestrian and public safety and bike safety throughout the city in general.
So just to follow that up, Jeremy, it was I think the mayor mentioned it earlier. What streets are wide enough to support that in the city of Glens Falls? If Webster isn't wide enough, what ones are?
In particular,
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. We've got a list of streets inventory.
Yeah, we have street width. Could you know what the number is for like how wide it needs to be able to support parking, bike lanes, and traffic lanes?
How wide is Hudson? dad's parking on both sides and bike lanes.
5 feet or so.
Yeah, if we could get that.
Well, and everyone we've looked at has been a choice, either or. We've yet to look at one. It doesn't mean we couldn't with Glen there's always in what we've looked at so far, I've only been there 20 months. And what we've looked at so far, every street has either been, it's not an option, or it's an option at the cost of parking, or it's it's never as easy as, geez, why don't we just make this 2 lanes bike path, right? And one side, right? And so anyway.
Well, if there is a number, it would be helpful.
Yeah, sure, I'm sure. It's a good question.
I agree with what you said, Mary, about having people here, but I also think, before I was in this position, I didn't monitor the Board of Public Safety agendas or all the Common Council agendas, so I think we have to do a better job at proactively letting people know that there's something that they would have interest in come on. I don't know that any of you would have
I agree with you.
thought about that, so I think we do want to hear from you, but we have to make sure that you know that there's something that you might want to speak.
Yeah, the reason why there's so many people here from Webster is because Diane went and handed out things to say, please come to council and let your voice be heard. So it's not for nothing. It's because there was outreach.
Well, that's true, but we do more than just that. We're the common council for the city of Glens Falls. We are looking out for the city. So it's appreciative if the people would come and put in their input, even if it's, not your area. We really want to hear your input about the city.
Any other common council want to share in this? So not seeing that, we should move to committee reports. Councilman Clark, committee report?
I have no report, but I think we're getting together to talk about personnel matter, personnel budget. I think what was it, October? Yeah, October 4th. We'll be meeting to discuss the personnel budget. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you. We're watching on YouTube.
Councilman Donahue, committee report? Sure.
Appreciate it.
Councilman Land, committee report?
Thank you. The Labor and Personnel Committee recently reached an agreement with the City Police Union for a multi-year contract. This contract gave salary increases in areas that will benefit the city, especially in recruitment, as you know, we're low on police officers, while it created an additional revenue stream to the city via health insurance and legacy cost adjustment. So to me, it was a good win-win. The union recently voted and ratified the contract, and we'll have a resolution at the next council meeting to approve such.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Palmer, committee report?
The Recreation Committee met a couple Fridays ago, and we talked about moving forward with getting bleachers in all of our new parks where we did all that improvement. So there's a resolution on our agenda tonight related to that, and the bleachers should be coming shortly, and that's exciting. We also talked about we want to have a fun kind of ribbon cutting tournament event to celebrate that we now have new courts at every park. And we were hoping to be able to do that this fall, but it seems like we're cutting it too close, and there's also so many conflicting events, so we're going to wait until the spring, so we'll have more time to plan. But that should be a really fun community event, and we can look forward to that. Building and Codes Committee will be meeting next Monday on the 2nd. We're going to be continuing to discuss our work on noise in the city. We've had a fair amount of comments from people who have had issues with noise, and our current ordinance doesn't really address that. So we've been working on it, and we are going to be getting some feedback from our Building and Codes officer and also from our city attorney, and we'll keep working on it and eventually have a draft for public comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Councilman Ladd?
On Wednesday, October 4th, there'll be a tech committee meeting at 5:30, and we know that right after at 6 o'clock we'll have a budget meeting, so it'll be a short meeting.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Good, committee report?
No report.
Thank you. Councilman Donahue, did you want to wait until later to come to a committee report, or do you? Okay. So how about no report then tonight? We'll just have Oh, you have a report? It's up to you, whichever you prefer. I can come back under new business.
Sustainability meeting on 19th and 2023. Climate Smart Money ends in July 2024. Work continues with climate action groups and climate action plans. Location, there were questions concerning location of meters for fleet policy that are more convenient for people to get to. Charging stations. So we looked at that a little bit. And along with climate action plans will be in place in 6 months. Your first bills from Northern Power and Light are $2,000, which sounds good. Solar panels will be allowed on the east landfill site, which is the PCB site, per POC. They're given their okay for that. Right now, we're looking at 14 vendors for the city solar panel business. So I think we have to make a decision, are we going to buy that infrastructure or are we going to rent it? So we have to make a decision on that. People are fooling around in the meeting talking about gateway, and we finally came up with City of Glens Falls gateway to the Adirondacks. And we're still looking at climate action plan, work on community engagement. We're talking about the Civic Center Arena, Housing Authority, Downtown Collaboration, East End Association, Glens Falls Hospital, and of course the fire department, the police department, DPW, water and sewer. So, Jeff has been meeting with several officials from out of town who are very interested in locating in Glens Falls. I can't give you any more information than that, but Jeff has taken these people to different sites, and they're quite, they want to be in the city. That's exciting. So I think there'll be a plus if we can get them located here.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. I don't see Cam Cardinal. He was going to talk to us about the Independent Living Center, I believe. So we'll postpone Cam until the next council meeting. And then under voice vote, we have one is a resolution to approve the minutes of the September 12, 2023 meeting of the Glens Falls Common Council. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Under roll call vote, are there any items, roll call items the council would like me to pull?
I have a question about number 6.
Sure. You want to ask the question now, or would you like to pull it first?
I was just curious where in the city that those sidewalks that are mentioned were located.
I'll have Pat send it to all of you. We asked him to when you and I were on the phone last night, and so if he hasn't sent that to you, I'll have him send it to all of you. Those are the 58,000. That's from last year's CBG sidewalk money. 2000 would be 2022. That was
Those are the ones that we didn't finish last year.
That's right. That we didn't finish last year, but this is not this year's money.
Right.
Just want you all to know we haven't yet looked at that, but so we have those streets. And they're done, and that we're passing a resolution for the main payments of that amount. Is that okay, Councilman?
Yeah.
Thank you. So, if are there any that would council like to pull for discussion? Not hearing any. No. Resolution 2 is a resolution to increase the revenue line A00999-2702. Gifts by $2,030, an increased expense line A23124-4479, other contracted services by $2,030 to accommodate the donation to the PAL football program as attached. 3 is a resolution to increase revenue line A00999-A2626, forfeiture and crime proceeds by $148.42, and increase expense line A23126-4479, seize assets state Glens Falls PD by $148.42. 4 is a resolution to increase revenue line A00999-2702, gifts by $1,090, and increase expense line A23124-4479, other contracted services by $1,090 to accommodate several other donations to the PAL program. 5 is a resolution to increase revenue code A000999-1589A, miscellaneous public safety income, by $309.24, and increase revenue line A23120-1100, police department overtime for services rendered at Wishwe Bosie's graduation ceremony. 6. It's coming from the revenue line into revenue code into the revenue line. They are paying us for that overtime, which we Bosie's. 6 is a resolution to approve City of Glens Falls community development annual payments in the amount of $58,855.77. 7 is a resolution to approve community development and rehabilitation application number 2022-51-003 in the amount not to exceed $30,000, with a scope of work to include minor electrical, significant damage to the main house roof, front porch, and rear flat roof due to weather, infiltration, and asbestos issues. 8 is a resolution to award applicant 2021-HB-039 a grant deferred loan with a forgiveness clause after 10 years to purchase an eligible home in accordance with the home or CBG program budgets located within the City of Glens Falls, Warren County, New York. The grant will not to exceed $24,000, is used for down payment, closing costs, and expenses to meet the financing gap between the purchase price and primary mortgage commitment, and that the mayor and/or community development director is hereby authorized to execute or have executed all necessary documents to implement this grant award in accordance with the closing and all New York State home and/or CBG program regulations. 9 is a resolution to award applicant 2021-HB035 a grant deferred loan with the forgiveness clause after 10 years to purchase an eligible home in accordance with the home or CBG program budgets located within the City of Glens Falls, Warren County, New York. The grant will be in the amount not to exceed $24,000 and used for down payment and closing costs, expenses to meet the financing gap between the purchase price and the primary mortgage commitment, and that the mayor or the community development director is authorized to execute or have executed all necessary documents to implement this grant award in accordance with closing and the New York State home and or CBG program regulations. 10 is a resolution to decrease expense line A67020-1000 personal services by $1,000 and increase expense line A67020-4238 recreation equipment supplies by $1,000 for attached uses. This will be reimbursable from Warren County. 11 is a resolution to increase to approve an increased revenue of line A00999-0489 General Government Aid ARPA by $15,819. An increased expense line A67020-2500 other equipment by $15,819 to purchase portable exterior benches for three city parks from the Morley Athletic Company of Amsterdam, New York. 12 is a resolution to decrease A67020-1000 recreation personal services by $600 and increase expense line A67020-4479 recreation other contracted services by $600 to pay expenses in the closing at Eastfield Pool for the winter. 13 is a resolution to approve an encroachment permit for Jerry Pareca, DBA Lorella's Restaurant, 21 Bay Street, Glens Falls, for placement of the sandwich board on the city sidewalk in front of the business from September 27, 2023 through May 31st, 2024, in compliance with PROAG regulations for access on the sidewalk. 14 is a resolution to approve encroachment permit for absolute design completion, 3 Brookwood Circle, Queensbury, New York, 12804, to repair the sidewalk located at 56 Glens Street from September 27, 2023 through October 18, 2023, with safeguards for pedestrian access and compliance with PROAG regulations for public access on the sidewalk, and to replace the sidewalks with full panels, not just the limits of trenching per the city engineer's standard conditions. 15 is resolution to decrease A 11990-9000 contingency by $16,465.95 and increase A56410-4479 other contracted services by $16,465.95 to start to pay part of the city's portion with the Glens Falls bid for the city flowers and maintenance of the same in the downtown area. 16 is a resolution to approve the warrant. Do we have a motion for a roll call vote?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Donahue?
Yes.
Councilman Landry?
Yes.
Councilman Palmer? Yes. Councilman Wendell?
Yeah.
And Councilman Landry?
Yes.
And so now I have, one final resolution that's coming off the floor. It is a request from the Glens Falls Public Library. The resolution is just to approve that the library's budget and a new position that the library that proposes for their library district budget, and a partially funded raised by an ad valorem assessment upon real property, and there's to fill a vacancy on the board of trustees. So the resolution, if you're comfortable with it, if you're not, we'll postpone it until 2 weeks from now. But if you are comfortable with it, this resolution is to put the budget on the November ballot and their trustee to be elected on the November ballot. So before we have a is everyone okay with this coming off the floor?
Well, I just have a question.
Yes.
There's a time frame associated to this, that's why I'm
That's right.
saying.
It would, in 2 weeks from tomorrow, would be the day before it has to be signed. I just got this this morning from our clerk, and because the hospital, or the library was late in sending it to us. So if you're all okay with this and feeling comfortable in voting to put it on the ballot, then we can hold a vote. And if you're not, then we can postpone it for 2 weeks and give you a chance to consider.
I'm comfortable making the motion if there's a second.
All we're doing is putting it on the ballot.
Right, and then everybody else gets a vote.
Yeah.
That's correct, but it's still, it's you didn't have prior notice, so I want to make sure that.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, so roll call vote, please.
Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Donahue?
Yes.
Councilman Landry?
Yes.
Councilman Palmer? Yes. Councilman Wendell?
Yes.
And Councilman Wendell?
Yes.
Thank you. Old business, yes, sir? Oh, yes, yeah, you need a copy of it. Old business, Councilman Clark.
No, I just, actually I do. I just wanted to thank Chip for being more elaborate with his explanations for the community development grants. And I also wanted to thank everyone from that stayed to listen to the city's business. I appreciate that. So thank you for sticking around.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Old business, Councilman Donahue.
No.
Old business, Councilman Landry.
Thank you. At the last meeting, we talked about the grant that the Community Development Office got for the trees. I had mentioned at the time, my concern with trees being planted on the side of the streets that have power lines, and I know sometimes that has to be done, but it doesn't take very long for a new tree to be planted to be destroyed by utilities who have all that right. Because of a couple of calls I've had from constituents lately, I'd also like to ask that those trees are not planted over sewer lines coming out of people's houses. Because what it ends up doing is a beautiful city tree grows its roots that goes down in the sewer line and impairs that sewer line. And and then creates an expense for the people in the city because they're responsible for it. So, again, just to mention when we plant those trees to try to take that into consideration. I'd also like to just make a quick comment about our communications of the recent events involving water discoloration of the city. Mayor, I'd like to ask to have someone in the city, if not yourself, reach out to the county to find out what they have available to the city to use if we get emergency information communicated quickly to the people in the city of Glens Falls. I think we did our best when this all happened, but it was a pretty poor showing in my estimation. I know that the county has an emergency app that you can sign up for, so that if there are any emergencies in the county, you'd be notified on your cell phone.
You can sign up for notifications through the Glens Falls city website.
Yep.
So that is something that's already there.
Right, well that's there, and I know that the county has it. And I also
But
believe
the city has it as well.
No, I know the city has it.
Well,
I guess my point was, I was just trying to say that the county happens to have this app. And one of the things I'm on it that I've noticed about the app is I don't need to know that the Schroon River is in flood stage. But if I lived around that area, I would. I also think, and I don't know this, that the county has reverse 911. And if that Saturday night that we had discoloration of water, and we had to tell our residents in the city that it was not safe to drink, we would have failed horribly. So I think that the city ought to do two things. The city ought to look to see if that capability is available to us. It may not be. And at the same time, I think the city should be taking a look at our emergency preparedness plan to make sure that it's up to date and it's got the information in it that we need to have.
Thank you.
That's it.
Old business, Councilwoman Palmer.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback off of the tree comments. So I was hoping that I think Charlotte would have still been here. She was concerned about trees, but I don't know if everybody knows what Councilman Landry was referring to, but the city just got a $400,000 grant for tree planting, which is really exciting. We paid for a tree inventory and management plan a couple of years ago. You might remember people coming around and taking pictures of your trees and studying them. And that this grant is to implement what's in the management plan, which includes where we should and shouldn't be planting trees and what species of trees we should be planting in the city. So, and it also includes consultation from an arborist. So it's good. We'll be planting intelligently and strategically instead of just putting trees up. So that's really positive. I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. Old business, Councilman Ladder.
So last council meeting, Councilor at Large said that he was going to look at putting together a plan for when we don't have coverage from the mayor and the Councilor at Large, so that we had a plan in place. I was just wondering where that's here.
Yeah, actually, I thanks for reminding me because I didn't write it in my notes, but I did draft up something. It's not ready. Hopefully it'll be ready for the next council meeting. I just want to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, so, right?
Councilwoman Good, old business?
Well, I just want to comment on the success of the Bloom Festival. I talked to Amy today, and they're saying what a great success the Bloom Festival was for the 50th year. And this actually was one of the years that we had great weather. Can you believe it? I was down. But, you know, I just heard it was just such a great event. And I just commend our DPW because it was a big job. There's over 5,000 people up at Crandall Park and throughout the city. And we're not a big city, but the people that we have working here are hard-working people, and we really appreciate them. And we really appreciate them, and we want them to really know that. So, thank you.
Thank you. New business, Councilman Clark.
I have.
New business, Councilman Downey. Councilman Lanning.
Thank you, Mayor. Just as Mary just said, great balloon festival, 50 years, it's amazing, it's been here around this long. It's a great present to our community because it's free. You don't have to have any money, you don't play park. You can walk up to a balloon and touch that, and we're the third largest hot air balloon festival in the country, and most other festivals don't have that. So we're lucky to have that, and it was a great event. Saturday night I was having dinner in downtown Glens Falls at one of our downtown restaurants, and I happened to hear a conversation going on a table right next to my wife and I from some people who were from out of town. They come here for the Balloon Festival, and they stayed in the Queensbury Hotel, and they ate in downtown Glens Falls. Kate, how about a hip hooray for that? Because that's what we're looking to try to do, to get more people in the hotel, to generate some bed tax, and get more people in our restaurants and collect some sales tax dollars. They talked about how beautiful the hotel was, how clean the hotel was. The thing that really caught my eye was what nice people we have here. How well we take care of not only our own, but people who come from out of town. And so I couldn't miss an opportunity to stop by the table and say I wasn't listening, but I was. And thank you very much for your comments. And their comment back to me, and I think sometimes we all don't, we miss what we really have here. They said, you are very, very lucky to live in Glens Falls, New York. So I was glad to hear that from somebody who was out of town. Not the last one, I got two. A reminder that open pickup starts October 9th, and you can go to our website and see what day your ward is picked up and how to properly handle waste that you put in the street. And my last is a question to you, Mayor. So we had this presentation tonight on Webster Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next step?
Well, we'll leave the public comment period open until the next common council meeting, and then the council could hold we put it on the agenda and let the council choose which of the two have a quick conversation and choose which of the two options the Creighton and Manning has proposed for us. The Board of Public Safety recommended the option with the bike lanes, but there's nothing holding the city of Glens Falls from the common council from selecting the other choice. They're both within complete streets. I think there's information. It's certainly clear that the vast majority of the folks who live on Webster would like it. There were I took notes as to what, and plus we had all the emails in the first place, so we know what the general concerns were, and we can discuss them quickly in open comment and vote. Right? And I think that's probably the appropriate thing to do. It's not something we've done, right? When it came to the Dix Avenue project or the Maple Street project, our engineer on record came to us with a plan. We presented those plans, those options to the Board of Public Safety. The Board of Public Safety picked what they thought was the best, safest use for the community, right? As they do, and then it's done, right? It's not even it's not something like when we did Dix Avenue. It's not like the council. We approved the funding, but we didn't approve the layout of the road, right? We same here, but doesn't mean we can't. And there's nothing that compels us to go with the recommendation of the Board of Public Safety. We need to listen to everybody, but there are certainly complete streets and other different points of view for you to consider. And I'll try to outline them as unbiased as I can, as simple what we heard. I remember when we met with that public meeting with John Strow and the web. I'll try to do the same. He simply just this is what I heard, these things, and then let you guys discuss it, and somebody make a motion to pass it. Okay?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. And if somebody didn't want to, they could too. It's been 3 years on the tip. Time to move forward, but certainly somebody could make a motion.
He's a council person. He's supposed to designate a street that they thought was wide enough. All right, I put in Pearl Street because they got parking on both sides, and another huge lane going right down both sides.
Yes.
But I don't know about the other.
Right, well, this is the continuing, this program, this project, started in 2018, really, and it's a different project. So those streets that you talked about, that you think, that's why I had a meeting with the Bike Glens Falls people and the Adirondack Glens Falls Transportation Council, right? They've done one in the past, and we need to take that information and put it all together, because I simply am not an expert on bike paths and bike lanes and or complete street policy, to be honest. So this is specifically about this project, and so we've got a couple options in front of us, and we've got plenty of public input to consider.
And I think what you're thinking of was when we were talking about what streets we thought might be eligible for overnight parking.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah. So, with that, a new business, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Palmer, new business.
I don't have any new business, but listening to, again, Councilman Landry talking about what the people said, I felt this weekend, Thursday night, I walked down to Crandall Park and saw the balloon event for a little bit. Friday night, I went to the football game, and it was just packed with so many of our neighbors and community members, not even people who had kids in the game. It was a beautiful night. The sunset was gorgeous. Saturday morning, I went to a farmer's market, and I just thought, like, how lucky are we to live in this community? So I definitely feel like this was a weekend that reminded us of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Ladman.
Just as we're talking about complete streets, I just want to, know when we get that task force together. A few people asked me about that.
Did you, Councilwoman, did you get in touch with Andrew?
I talked to
Okay, all right. Are we good with that?
He's going to get it.
Okay. We're waiting on one more.
Thank you.
Diana, did you give the name for the task force?
For what?
For the task force?
Complete Streets Task Force? I did give a name, yes. It was, I sent it in an email.
Oh, yeah. No, I'll find it. I'll find it.
Is the person I recommend.
Okay.
And it's not just a made-up name. It's great.
He's an actor.
I'm sorry.
He's an architect with JMC.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Yep. New business, Councilwoman Good. I'll just follow up with, the weekend was fantastic. We do have 2 new businesses that are looking. One's coming out of Rochester, absolutely loving Glens Falls, looking to possibly relocate on Primes Island, and they're a kayaking company that produces kayaks and is just dying to move out of Rochester into Glens Falls. We've heard more and more. I'm hoping at the next council meeting, and I think it's October 4th, I will announce, I'm 90% sure that the groundbreaking for the DRI will be October 20th. We've had a meeting yesterday with the governor's scheduler, and we're working on it. I'm not ready to make an announcement, but I want you to know it's coming. There's been so much going on, and I rode on my first balloon this weekend, and it was truly amazing. But I guess I was supposed to, I don't know if you guys realize this, but the city of Glens Falls decided to keep the crowd at Crandall Park instead of trying. We'd lose about half of the crowd when they would have opening ceremonies, and they'd have some music and some vendors, and then we'd ask everybody to go downtown for a block party. And instead we hosted the VIP, we buy dinner for the pilots, and we got an additional band, the Refrigerators, to come to Glens Falls and to play after the McCrells, and it was fantastic. I left at about 9:30, and there was still over 1,000 people in that field. It was truly a credit. We need to take advantage and increase more events like that in downtown. It is amazing when it gets hopping at the football game. It was great to see our fire department and our police officers there, and how engaged they are in the community. So truly a great weekend.
And the semi-pro team won championship.
Yes, Yeah, I missed that, so there it is. Anyway, thank you all. I have no more new business. With that, let me just check quickly before I ask for it. Do we have any more public comment from the community? Okay. Haven't heard from you.
I'm Kate Bruce and I live in Glens Falls, and I thought I'd end the meeting this evening with my nice little old lady shtick. First of all, I thought the meeting this evening was the best I have ever attended because it showed what good government really looks like. Residents came with serious issues. You may not agree with them, but you all listened. You had ideas, you expressed what knowledge you had about the subject openly with them, and everyone was respectful. It was really fantastic, and I hope you have many more meetings like that. The second thing is, this is my nice little old lady routine I do. I know it's really important to all of you, but you have two city employees who deserve, for the record, to be recognized. One is Jason, who drives the Route 7 bus, I think, that goes to Walmart. I happened to be on the bus, 3 old ladies laughing hilariously because what were we doing riding a bus? 2 teenagers who obviously had some pretty serious behavioral issues. A woman in a wheelchair who had to be assisted onto the bus, and the young woman who had no idea where she was going, but Jason managed to stop every block to see if that was the street she was looking for. He was polite, he was wonderful. He really made me feel when I got off the bus, I'm lucky to live in Glens Falls. I also want to thank Emily Neal, and I'd like her to stand up so you can all applaud her. Having just given up driving a car, and if I were not so old, I'd rent one of those bikes and probably ride it on Webster Avenue. But I happened to go in to get a bus pass, I think that's what it's called, and Emily took care of me. And then I made a comment questioning why all of those encroachment permits were on the Common Council agenda. They took so much time, and why did you have to be put up with all of that? She gave me a lecture that was worthy of a law school lecture about why it's important for the Common Council to deal with issues that the public might think, that wasn't a big deal. But it is a big deal, and she was terrific in her explanation, and it really reflected the good job that all of you do. I don't necessarily agree with everything you do, but you do a fantastic job of governing this city. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Not seeing any other public comment. Peter, do we have any online?
No, I'd like to congratulate the Municipal Green Jackets.
Green Jackets won the regional championship, all right. Go Glens Falls Green Jackets. With not hearing any more public comment, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.